We are live.
Right. Good morning, everyone. The Rhode Island Ethics Commission for Tuesday, February 27th, 2024 will come to order. The first item is a motion to approve the minutes of the open session held on January 23rd, 2024. Is there a motion?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's moved by Commissioner Ritchie and seconded by Commissioner Centarini. Roll call vote, Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Centarini.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The next item is director's report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a note that we're live streaming and recording this morning. The live stream link is printed on the agenda. The meeting materials that are here in the room are also available on our website for downloading and printing. We'll continue streaming during open session, then we'll close the meeting during the executive session, and we'll reopen the same meeting once the commission is through with executive session to finish up the meeting and report out any votes taken in executive session. That report out of votes taken in executive session will also be published on our website after the meeting. So turning to the director's report regarding complaints and investigations. We currently have 5 complaints pending and 1 decision that I anticipate will be issued at the end of this week. It's in the key case. We have 10 advisory opinions pending right now. Half of those 5 are on today's agenda. We had a lot of APRA requests since the last meeting. We had 22 since the last meeting. We fulfilled all 22 within 1 business day, as we always strive to do. Of those, 17 were related to complaints, so the vast majority were related to the complaint matters that you heard. 2 related to advisory opinions, and 3 related to financial disclosure. Let's see, legislative update. So this is something that hasn't been on the agenda for a while, but it comes onto the agenda once the legislative session starts each year. Part of what I do as executive director is I register as the Ethics Commission's official lobbyist. Even though we're a public agency, we still have to register as a lobbyist if we ever go down to the State House to testify. So I register each year as the Ethics Commission's lobbyist. And then as part of that, I review all of the bills that get introduced in the House and Senate. And what I'm looking for are any bills that would impact either the Code of Ethics or the Ethics Commission. And when I identify them, I bring them to you as part of a legislative update, describe them, and then let you direct me as to what, if anything, you want me to do about that as your lobbyist. Sometimes the answer might be just monitor it, and usually that's the most common thing. Just keep an eye on it and let the commission know. Sometimes it's go down and testify in whatever committee the bill is being heard before, either to support it or oppose it, or more frequently, to not take a position, but to be there really as a expert witness for the committee members so that they can ask me questions about the impact that it might have on the commission, to give them some of the historical background as to why we do it a certain way and what it would look like if we did it a different way. So with that being said, there is 1 bill that's currently pending. That's a Senate bill. I put a copy of it into your packet. This is Senate Bill 2463 that was introduced by Senators McKinney, Boyer, Pearson, DePalma, Miller, and Gallo. And this is a bill that would do 2 things. And I'm not sure which of them was the primary purpose of the bill, but I'll describe what each of the things it would do is. First, it seems like a really good thing that this bill would do is it tackles the issue of where there are vacancies on the commission that are outstanding for a long time, and it's causing the commission to have difficulty achieving a quorum, which we've been having for the last few years. It's a relatively new phenomenon, but it's happened over the years. What this amendment would do is say that if a vacancy exists for more than 30 days, then at that point, you don't have to take those vacancies into account for quorum purposes. So a quorum would constitute a majority of the active members of the commission. So right now, there are 7 active commission members and 2 vacancies that have existed for over 30 days. And so the commission could meet and hold a meeting if just a majority of those 7 or 4 people showed up. As it stands, with a 9-member commission, we have to have 5 people to have a meeting. We can't even meet without 5. So that's an interesting, and I think a helpful change to the quorum requirements for the commission. We didn't ask for it, so I'm not sure exactly, who came up with it and why they decided to do it. So that's one change. The other is that it would subject the appointments of ethics commissioners to the advice and consent of the Senate. As you know, currently, many, maybe most state appointees do go through advice and consent, but ethics commissioners don't go through advice and consent and never have. And I think the reason is that that's the compromise that the General Assembly made when the commission was created. Instead of most other agencies, their commissioners or board members are appointed just by the governor with no input from the House or Senate. Unlike the Ethics Commission, where the governor only gets 4 direct appointments of anyone he or she wants. But the other 5, the governor still makes the appointment, but it must come from a list from the legislative leaders. And that has kind of taken the place of advice and consent for the Ethics Commission. And that's the way it's been since '87 when the commission was created. So I'm not sure this isn't the first time that the Senate has introduced a bill that would add advice and consent. It has never come close to passing the House. And I think it would be a hard sell for the House to make that change. I'm not sure, what would motivate them to do that. So that's what we have with this bill. One, that would change the quorum requirements, one aspect, and the other aspect that would add advice and consent. Generally, the commission has not taken a position on any legislation that kind of alters the makeup of the commission, as long as the commission can operate. The commission has always left it up to the legislature to decide how many members will serve on the commission, what their terms will be, just not inserting itself into those issues. And I would think that's probably the right thing to continue doing. If they want to add advice and consent, it's their prerogative to add it, whether or not we think it would be difficult on some, The other aspect, though, the quorum reduction, I think the commission might want to consider being supportive. Maybe not.
How would we go about discussing that?
Yeah.
Now, do that later?
Yeah, we can discuss it now.
Well, I guess I'd like to I'd rather have, it's not on a fast track or anything, right?
No.
No, I guess I'd like to know what our government friends think of that, and, I don't know, it just feels, I don't know if there's an ideal number in terms of quorum, but it feels like we're letting people off the hook of doing their jobs, which I don't know. Personally, it's my first reaction, but,
My reaction is just a drafting, like a careful drafting reaction, which is there should be a minimum. Like, we don't want to
Yeah.
get down to
Yeah.
like 3 active
Right.
commissioners and the four, it's a party of 1. So, that's what I would
to
just,
be a war of attrition.
I think my lawyer mind is like, well, there's some missing information here. But I'm not opposed to altering the forum to active members, especially, we are pretty robust, we're only a couple members off. But if it got down to, the Carolyn's point that, let's say there were more vacancies, or like 5 vacancies, 6 vacancies, then you have a panel of 3 or a panel of 2 making a decision, a big decision.
Yeah, the only time that I can think that we actually did cancel due to a lack of quorum was post-pandemic. Shortly after the executive order that allowed us to meet remotely was removed, I did have to cancel at least one meeting for a lack of a quorum. And that was the time, I think maybe we only had 6 commissioners at that time, and 2 couldn't come, and fortunately, we didn't lose our jurisdiction. The reason quorums become important, we can always kick an advisory opinion down the road to another month or another 2 weeks, although it's an inconvenience to the people that have come to after. But because we have to complete our investigations within a statutory 180 days,
Yeah,
that, very often, we're right up against that limit, and a last minute cancellation of a meeting could mean that a big case, we just lose our jurisdiction, we have to dismiss it. And the court's been clear, it's jurisdiction. It's not something that anybody can waive. If we miss the deadline, the case is over. So that's never happened.
There's also another potential difficulty with maintaining a quorum. If there's a complaint and one of the commissioners or more than one commissioner misses the probable cause determination, then that commissioner or group of commissioners can't hear the merits of the complaint, as I understand it.
We can,
No, you can.
we can.
What you can't do is, if you're going to sit on an adjudicative hearing, and the hearing is held over several sessions, you have to be present at all the sessions.
But you have to be present at the probable cause.
No, you don't.
At some point, could you, just let me know what statute that you're depending on,
Okay.
that opinion on?
Yeah,
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. And I guess there's just a lot of questions about, I don't know the history of this, has the number of commissioners changed in terms of membership? What's the rationale of having 9? Is that so every elected official or body gets to have a certain number? And ultimately, why aren't people making appointments? That's a good question to ask the where are these vacancies enduring? Are they usually from some particular body who's just not doing their job? So I just find that annoying, frankly.
Right, there have been proposals over the years also to have I think there was one proposal where if the governor didn't make an appointment within a certain 60 days, then the chief justice of the Supreme Court would make an appointment, but that didn't go anywhere either.
Maybe we could make the appointment.
Yeah. Well, I hear everything you're saying. I can just continue to monitor the bill. I can show up for the committee hearing and just attend without signing in to testify, just to see what is said. But the problem is if I show up, they may ask me to sit, which I could do without taking a position, just to answer any questions. They would be happy to do that.
Is it scheduled at all?
It's not scheduled yet.
Mhm.
My guess is it'll go before Senate Judiciary.
Mhm.
Since Senator Whiter's one of the sponsors. I mean, the list of sponsors, these are pretty heavy hitting lists, so I assume it's gonna get a hearing.
Mhm.
So shall I just attend the hearing and be available? Would you like me to sign in and not take a position just to answer any questions they might have? Or,
I mean, I don't think we have a position. I don't have a position, but if anything, I'd like to know the rationale. Is it just to ensure that we are able to continue?
I can stay completely neutral, that's not a problem. I can, so maybe I'll reach out to one of the sponsors also and see
Yeah.
what they're
Good
after.
to know.
I'll make also I'll report back.
Do you have any sense of where Common Cause or anyone else is on this?
I don't.
Yeah, so
I've
I'd like to know
talked to their executive director,
Yeah.
about the fact that this bill exists, but we didn't get into the merits.
I'd be curious.
Our current quorum is 5,
Yes,
so perhaps one way around the problem would be to set a minimum of 4
Mhm.
in drafting.
Hmm.
That gets,
That's what she had.
That's what
That's
exactly.
I suggested too.
and I'm sorry I was late, but was there a discussion of the new appointment process? It's proposed here.
I did mention that they've proposed advice and consent of the Senate to be added.
And eliminating the lists. Making it a purely executive branch issue from start to finish. No more list from the speaker, no more list from that's how I read it at least.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, so it's just a direct gubernatorial appointment.
Right, which we do.
Changes the game.
Mhm.
Again, so what the other part of this was the discussion that some things like this have been proposed in the past from the Senate and never really got traction, it could have traction, but it would be surprising for the House to, or the executive branch to approve, that big of a change to the appointment process.
Is it required constitutional? You know, we go back to the whole question of executive branch appointments and legislative appointments, which we dealt with in other contexts a few years ago. So there could be a constitutional issue there as well. But either way, there's nothing pending in the House. Is that
No,
what you're saying? Okay.
I hear you about the, the separation of powers, constitutional issues. I've always, it's always been a position that what saves it is the fact that the governor makes all of the appointments. Notwithstanding the fact that there's some nominations that come from legislative leadership. But I suppose there's a discussion or an argument to be made.
This thing, wasn't that what they had on the lottery commission, one of those commissions? I thought that was exactly the same approach, and they said we can't do that, but it doesn't matter. If there's a House bill pending, if there isn't a bill pending in the House, we don't need to think about this. It has to happen before there's ever going to be anything that affects us.
So you'll monitor, gather some more information, maybe bring it back and
Yes,
update next time.
exactly.
Great. Great, thank you.
The only other thing I'll mention, this is just for information purposes, in the budget, there was, an amendment to, our state's procurement laws, which, don't change the code of ethics at all, but it creates this supplemental code of procurement ethics for the state's procurement officers. It appears that it could be in relation to some of the complaints that were pending recently at the Ethics Commission with DOA procurement officials. It wouldn't change our jurisdiction, it would just add some additional safeguards to the state's procurement process, how department directors and their subordinates in the procurement world could react to state vendors and how to treat them fairly. Just bring that up. Something went into Article 3 of the budget this year.
Wouldn't it be parallel jurisdiction?
It specifically states that they would have, I think what it's meant to do is to give the Department of Administration more authority to take personnel related action against people who don't follow strict ethical guidelines for procurement processes. And then, if necessary, to also refer it to the Ethics Commission once they've taken their personnel actions, which seems like a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions? Do you have a last item on
That's the last
general office administration?
I didn't have anything to add under that.
Okay, great. Okay, so the next item is advisory opinions, and our first sign-in is James Rose. Morning, Ms. Rose.
Good morning, commissioners, welcome to the roads. This opinion is on in binders. Attorney Rhodes was employed by the Joint Committee on Legislative Services, JCLS, as a contract attorney for the Rhode Island Senate between April 2021 and February of 2023. He was then employed by JCLS as a part-time staff in the Senate Legal Counsel Office, serving as a committee attorney to the Senate Judiciary Committee. He represents that his employment was exclusive to the Senate and did not extend to the House of Representatives. On December 22nd of 2023, he left his employment with the Senate to take a position as a senior attorney with the Conservation Law Foundation. This is an environmental advocacy organization. It often works directly with legislators to better align existing laws in order to achieve their purpose relative to the resolution of environmental challenges. His duties at the Conservation Law Foundation include the development of legislation and working with elected officials on policy proposals related to climate change and clean energy. Attorney Rhodes acknowledges that he is prohibited by the code from representing his new private employer before the Senate following 1 year of him leaving his position with the Senate. However, he seeks guidance regarding whether he would be allowed to represent his new employer before the House of Representatives, which he considers separate and independent from the Senate. The revolving door provisions of the Code of Ethics prohibits a public employee from representing himself or another person before any state agency by which he was employed. The prohibition lasts during that employment and for 1 year thereafter. This prohibition is absolute and applies to the entire agency, including all of its offices, sections, programs, or divisions. In previous advisory opinions, the Ethics Commission has applied the revolving door provisions of Section 5E to both members and employees of the General Assembly and consistently has prohibited them from representing themselves or others before either chamber of the General Assembly during that 1 year after leaving office. I have listed several prior advisory opinions on pages 2 and 3 of the draft as examples. Considering the petitioner's representations, the prior advisory opinions issued, it is the opinion of the staff that the petitioner must refrain from appearing before the entire General Assembly during that 1 year following his employment with the Senate. The code, however, does not prohibit purely personal or ministerial interactions with members of the General Assembly or staff members of the General Assembly, provided that such interactions do not involve General Assembly decision-making. The petitioner is cautioned to be mindful of the prohibitions of 5E when he interacts with members and staff of the General Assembly. Prohibited interactions could occur at a restaurant, on a phone, via email, during social political gatherings. It is the content of the discussions rather than the venue that matters in those circumstances. This is, that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes, you've heard the staff's recommendation and analysis. Do you have any comments, questions?
The only question that I have in that last piece of understanding the line of what is ministerial and personal versus
Mhm.
what is lobbying. As an example, if a legislator asks regarding like a piece of legislation or something they're working on, what does this do? Like, can you explain something to me? Does that fall in the line of lobbying versus does it not fall in the line of lobbying? Like, that, I think that's just the understanding what is the scope of that prohibition and where does that line, if we know that line,
Mhm.
or how gray and where is it?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Sometimes it's a little gray. It
Yeah.
depends, I would assume it depends on the circumstances as to how are they reaching out to you to have the explanation? Are you part of a group that had appeared before the General Assembly? Or is it they just picking up the phone and saying, what does this mean? Can you tell me what that means?
Mhm.
And if it's, I would assume if it's purely just explaining what it means rather than trying
Yeah.
to influence the decision making, but
Well, I think if something is 2 + 2 is 4, it's factual, but if it's up to interpretation, and if you ask someone who may not feel as strongly about the legislation as the organization would have a different interpretation, that's more lobbying.
there could be always two opinions on
Yeah.
interpretation, so.
Yeah.
My view is, if you're asked what's going on with this legislation, it's a no, but if you're asked if you want to go out and have a beer, it's a yes.
Got it.
Sounds more fun.
A lot.
But then don't talk about the
Right.
legislation.
Right, exactly.
Not over $25 beer.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
I'll move.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Peterson, seconded by Commissioner Jones, roll call vote, Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Zanarini.
All right,
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Good luck.
Good. Thank you
Enjoy-
very much.
Enjoy the time when you're involving doors. Okay. The next signing is Joshua Ferreira.
Good morning, everyone. This draft is at tab C in your binders.
The one is Ferreira.
And I was prepared to welcome Captain Ferrera, but I will not bury the lead here. He is now Deputy Chief Ferrera. Petitioner is the Deputy Chief of the Tiverton Fire Department. He had been recommended by the Fire Chief to become the Deputy Chief. And the petitioner's mother is employed by the same fire department as the chief's administrative assistant. Although the petitioner's mother reports directly to the chief, in the event that the fire chief is unavailable, the deputy chief would serve as the fire chief's designee. The petitioner has asked the commission to advise as to whether the proposed alternate supervisory chain of command outlined in the draft will sufficiently insulate him from conflicts of interest involving his mother in the event that he is called upon to act as the fire chief's designee. Deputy Chief Ferrera is an 18-year veteran of the Tiverton Fire Department, and he rose from the rank of captain to deputy chief. The facts surrounding the resurrection of the deputy chief position are documented in the draft, as are the facts surrounding the petitioner's application for the position and his ultimately becoming the candidate supported by the chief. The petitioner submitted a copy of the deputy chief job description, which is in your binders immediately behind his request letter. That description identifies a number of responsibilities which reflect the deputy's general role as the chief's principal assistant in day-to-day operations. It also states that the deputy chief will be responsible for the efficient operation of the fire department in the chief's absence. Petitioner's mother has been employed by the fire department for more than 23 years. She reports again directly to the chief, as you will see from the fire department's organizational chart that appears in the binder right behind the deputy chief's job description. The administrative assistant's job description appears right after that. The administrative assistant reports directly to the chief on all matters relating to her duties and responsibilities. So what happens now that Deputy Chief Ferrera is in the position and the chief becomes unavailable and he has to assume the role as designated advocate? The code does allow for an alternate supervisory chain of command, and this is not a novel situation. And alternate supervisory chains of command have been developed, approved, and implemented on numerous occasions. And 3 previously issued advisory opinions cited on pages 3 and 4 of the draft involved alternate supervisory chains of command for members of the same family who all served on fire and police departments. Importantly, when it comes to an alternate supervisory chain of command, the role of the Ethics Commission is to evaluate, not create them. Nor will the Ethics Commission impose a proposed alternate supervisory chain of command upon a public official or employee without their consent. Here, the proposal, which is the final insert behind Deputy Chief Ferrera's request letter, states that only in cases where the fire chief is unavailable and supervisory actions involving the administrative assistant become necessary, the town administrator will serve as the fire chief's designee. Both the fire chief and the town administrator have explicitly agreed to this arrangement, and the document contains both their signatures. It is the opinion of staff that the alternate supervisory chain of command outlined by the petitioner and agreed upon by the fire chief and the town administrator appropriately requires that in situations where the fire chief is unavailable and the deputy chief is acting as his designee, the petitioner's mother shall report directly to the town administrator regarding all matters involving her supervision, evaluation, appointment, promotion, transfer, and or any financial matter that directly impacts her. Now, for purposes of including additional requirements of the provisions that are cited in this advisory opinion, staff does suggest adding that the petitioner must recuse from participation in his public capacity in all situations where he has reason to believe or expect that his mother will be financially impacted or will obtain an employment advantage as a result of his participation, and in all matters involving the classification or discipline of his mother.
In each of the situations from which the petitioner is required to recuse, he may not delegate such tasks to a subordinate, but must instead defer to the established alternate chain of command. With these modifications, which are subject to the agreement of the fire chief and the town administrator, the proposed alternate supervisory chain of command would be reasonable and sufficient to insulate the petitioner from any apparent conflicts involving his mother's current employment. And we would advise the petitioner to remain vigilant about identifying and avoiding any conflicts that might arise that aren't addressed in this advisory opinion. And he is encouraged to seek further guidance from the commission as necessary. I'm happy to answer any questions or to defer to Deputy Chief Ferrera as appropriate.
Great, thank you. Deputy Chief, you've heard the staff's analysis and recommendation. Do you have any comments, additions, questions?
I don't believe so this time.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I guess my question is to council, which is, I think you prefaced your comments by saying that we don't give them the alternate command alley, but we are modifying. Is that typical for staff to do, to come talk to them and say, well, but if you're gonna do that, then you need to do a little bit of this too?
It has happened, and I do draw a distinction, although your point is well taken, that I did not sit down and come up with a plan. But during the course of reviewing the plan, if an I needs to be dotted or a T needs to be crossed, I don't think that rises to the level of incorporating something. Thank you.
My only question was, is there, and I think the answer is no, but is there anything that the administrative assistant role does that would involve signing off on overtime or anything financially related?
I'll defer to you, sir.
So she does process all the payroll and all that stuff. The deputy chief isn't, subject to overtime or comp time or anything of that nature. But she does sign off on, she does do the payroll, she processes it, sends it to town hall for the treasurer's office.
Mhm.
And the treasurer's office is actually who processes payroll, so.
Is there anything like that that she would oversee that does involve you, whether it's you have to make a medical claim or?
I mean, like engine on duty stuff, all that stuff would be, it would go to her and then would be approved by the fire chief.
Okay,
I mean, it's
Yeah,
been the
that's what I
same,
thought.
it's been the same process, but both her entire employment and my entire employment, it hasn't, nothing's ever changed, like she's always processed my payroll and as a.
even when she's
member
mad at you?
So much for family secrets.
So, but I, obviously, speaking to Lynn, I realized that there's never been an issue in the 18 years I've been there with anything, I believe in that, so, but.
It's my understanding that the administrative assistant's duties in that area are more ministerial and that she doesn't exercise discretion,
Yeah.
say to withhold.
She has no like
As to-
executive decision-making powers. She just, everything she does has to be signed off by the fire chief. And then obviously as the alternate chain of command states, if I were the acting fire chief, then I would have to go to the town administrator for things of all those, as outlined in that.
Great. Great. Any other questions? No?
Just wanted to say thank you for your service. It's not an easy job. Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there a motion to accept staff's recommendation?
No.
Is there a second?
Second?
Moved by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Peterson. Roll call vote, Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Congratulations.
Thank you
and
very
Thanks for coming. Shall we go to
Congratulations.
under tab B, Christian LaChapelle Millet?
Yes.
Mr. LaChapelle Miller is not here today. He informed me that he has a work-related travel, so he couldn't attend. However, he asked me to proceed in his absence in the presentation of the draft.
Thank you.
Mr. LaChapelle Miller is employed as the Chief Implementation Aide to the Director of the CYF. He's been in that position since August of 2023. He provides support to the DCYF Executive Director relative to the implementation and administration of the department's special projects and programs. I have listed examples of his duties on page 1 of the draft. The petitioner represents that his normal working hours are 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, although work hours sometimes may vary. He was recently appointed by the president of the Providence City Council to serve on the Providence Juvenile Hearing Board. The hearing board provides over cases brought by the Providence Police Department against first-time nonviolent juvenile offenders who reside in the city of Providence. The hearing board normally conducts its hearings in the evenings. Therefore, the petitioner will be performing his hearing board duties outside of his normal working hours with the DCYF. The hearing board ordinarily does not hear cases that involve a juvenile who is under the active supervision of DCYF. Those cases are normally heard by the Rhode Island Family Court. The petitioner states that in the unlikely event that such case comes before the hearing board, he will recuse from participating in any discussion and decision making relative to it. He further states that it's outside of the hearing board's jurisdiction to refer cases to the DCYF directly. He explains that if there is suspected abuse and neglect, the juvenile detective would refer those cases directly to the DCYF rather than the hearing board. As part of his duties with the DCYF, he interacts with DCYF caseworkers, supervisors, and administrators on administrative matters. He explains that he does not interact with any of the juveniles that are under the DCYF supervision, nor does he oversee or have knowledge of their case files. He explains that he does have access to the electronic system containing all open DCYF cases, but that he would not access that information relative to any cases that are coming before the hearing board. Given this set of facts, the petitioner seeks guidance regarding whether the code of ethics prohibits him from simultaneously serving in those two public positions. In the instant matter, neither the DCYF nor the hearing board are considered to be businesses. Therefore, the relationship between the petitioner and those two public entities is not considered to be one of business associates. As a result, the business associate prohibitions that normally constrain the petitioner while carrying out his public duties do not apply under their circumstances. The Ethics Commission has also consistently concluded in prior advisory opinions that the Code of Ethics does not create an absolute bar against a person's simultaneous service in two public entities. The commission usually reviews those cases on those circumstances on a case by case basis to determine whether or not there will be a conflict. I have listed several prior advisory opinions on page 3 of the draft. Here, the petitioner's duties at the DCYF and on the hearing board are separate and distinct. Based on the petitioner's representation, there is no indication that serving in both capacity would either impair his independence of judgment relative to either position or induce him to disclose any confidential information that he has acquired during in either of those roles. Further, there is no indication that his simultaneous service in and of itself creates a substantial conflict with respect to carrying out his duties in the public interest. Accordingly, in the opinion of the staff, that the Code of Ethics does not prohibit him from serving in those simultaneously in those two positions. The petitioner is cautioned, however, to remain vigilant and identify any situations that may create a conflict of interest that hasn't been addressed in this advisory opinion, and either seek further guidance from the commission or recuse in those matters. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd like to just put on the record something. In my capacity as a private attorney, I represent DCYF in 2 matters in the Supreme Court. I looked at, Mr. LaChapelle Miller's job description very carefully. There's no possible way that he and I will interact in our different roles. So I did not feel a need to recuse either for conflict or an appearance of conflict in this matter.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Strauss, roll call vote, Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandalini.
All right,
Commissioner Ritchie. Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, Melanie Reeves.
This draft is at tab D, and Ms. Reeves lives and works on Block Island and was unable to be here today. She sends her apologies and has asked that we proceed in her absence. Petitioner is the finance director at the Block Island School. She's worked at the school for the last decade, and the superintendent is her direct supervisor. She seeks an advisory opinion regarding what limitations, if any, the code places upon her in carrying out her official duties, given that her spouse is expected to bid on a project at the school. The school recently received grant funding from the Rhode Island Department of Education, which is to be used to construct an outdoor classroom at the school. The project will involve the pouring of concrete and the construction of a prefab shade structure to be modeled after an existing structure at a local park. The petitioner's husband is a self-employed, full-time excavation contractor who she expects will be interested in submitting a bid on the project. Ms. Reeves did not participate in the development of the RFP. That was done by an architect, project manager, and 2 teachers from the school. The project manager sent Ms. Reeves the RFP to be posted on the Block Island Bulletin and BidNet. Petitioner made a couple of ministerial edits to the RFP, which are described at the top of page 2 of the draft, but made no substantive changes and was not given any discretion to do so. The bid submissions will be scored by the superintendent's administrative assistant, and the school's facilities director. Now, in the past, the petitioner had scored similar bid submissions for school projects, but when this one was announced, she eliminated herself as a potential member of the scoring team because she thought her spouse may want to bid on it. The petitioner explains the 100-point scoring system for the bids, which can also be found on page 2 of the draft. And once the scores have been determined, the superintendent will make a recommendation to the school committee, and the school committee will have the discretion to accept or reject that recommendation. Once the contract is awarded to a successful bidder, the petitioner will take no role in approving payments to that contractor. Among the ministerial duties she describes on page 2 of the draft, she will print and mail checks, but not sign them. Under the Code of Ethics, the petitioner may not take official action that will directly financially impact her husband and must recuse from participating in matters in which her husband appears or presents evidence before her municipal agency. She cannot participate in any matter as part of her duties if she has reason to believe or expect that her husband is a party or participant or will be directly financially impacted or receive an employment advantage by virtue of her participation. In this instance, Ms. Reeves' duties appear to be solely ministerial in nature. Again, she did not take part in developing the RFP or the scoring system to review the bids. She's not going to participate in the scoring, the awarding of the contract, supervising the work performed under the contract, or reviewing and approving payments to the bidder. Accordingly, it is the opinion of staff that the petitioner may carry out her duties as described in the draft in conformance with the code at this time, notwithstanding that her spouse is among those expected to respond to the RFP or the project at the school. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation? Second?
Second.
Okay.
Made the motion.
Yeah, quietly. So Commissioner Centerini made the motion and is seconded by Commissioner Jones. Roll call vote. Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. One more for you.
Yes, Mark Aromley at tab E. Mr. Aramli sends his apologies as prior commitments keep him from being here, but he has requested that we proceed in his absence. The petitioner is a member of the Newport City Council, which has appointing authority over Newport's Historic District Commission and the Zoning Board of Review. Under Section 5E of the Code of Ethics, Mr. Aramli is prohibited from representing himself before not only the City Council, but before the HDC and the Zoning Board. He seeks a hardship exception that will allow him to appear before both the HDC and the Zoning Board in order to request approval of repairs and renovations that he has planned for a home that he recently purchased in Newport, where he intends to live with his family. They currently live in another home in Newport. In 2020, prior to his election to the City Council, the petitioner purchased a parcel of land in Newport with the intent to build a home on it. For reasons that are explained in footnote 1 of the draft, he expects that it could take up to 7 years to do so. In the meantime, he has purchased a larger interim home to accommodate his growing family. That house is currently under contract, and it is in a historic district and requires a substantial amount of work that will require approval by both the HDC and the Zoning Board. That work includes a new roof, the remediation of substantial wood rot and water intrusion on various exterior windows and doors, various window and door relocations, the expansion of a garage, and the construction of a connector from the garage to the home. The Ethics Commission reviews questions of hardship on a case-by-case basis and considers the following in cases involving real property. 1, whether the subject property involves a public official's principal residence or principal place of business, whether the official's interest in the property was pre-existing to his public office or recently acquired, whether the relief sought involves a new commercial venture, and whether the matter involves a significant financial impact. The Commission may consider other factors, and no single factor is determinative. Here, the petitioner is waiting to close on a home in which he and his family intend to reside. While the subject property was not acquired prior to the start of his public service, it does involve his anticipated future personal residence and not a commercial venture. Also, the decision to purchase the interim home was the result of the prolonged time it's taking for the petitioner to be able to construct his desired new home, the process for which he did start before he was elected to the City Council. Further, the purchase of what the petitioner hopes will be an interim home necessitates a number of repairs and renovations amounting to a significant economic impact. For each of the reasons stated in the draft, it is the opinion of staff that a hardship exception to Section 5E's prohibitions is warranted. However, in order to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, it is recommended that the petitioner be told he must recuse from the City Council's appointment or reappointment to any person to the HDC and or to the Zoning Board until after the election cycle for his council seat, following the complete resolution of the HDC and Zoning Board's review and approval of his applications, and this would include any appeals related to them. Additionally, the petitioner shall inform these agencies of his receipt of the advisory opinion and that he will recuse from the appointment of members to both agencies as set forth in it. By way of a postscript, Mr. Aramli qualified for a hardship exception in December of 2022, at which time he was prohibited from making appointments to the Zoning Board before he wished to appear. In April of 2023, he sought clarification in the form of another advisory opinion as to whether he also had to recuse from appointments to the HDC because his appearance before the Zoning Board was connected to an appeal of a decision by the HDC. He was told that he need not recuse from appointments to the HDC unless and until his appeal resulted in a remand to the HDC. Mr. Aramli has asked me to let you know that he has voluntarily recused from appointing any members to the HDC on a total of 4 occasions since the issuance of that last advisory opinion in order to avoid even an appearance of impropriety. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Regarding the zoning board's involvement. Looking at the page 1, your note, he's on the page 2.
Yes.
What is the status of the zoning board's involvement? Given the fact that, apparently a number of butters, remonstrants, have indicated their, displeasure with the request before the zoning board.
As to the,
Timeline for the construction of the profit of the home.
the new home that he
The new
intends to
home.
build, not the home for which
No.
he seeks this hardship.
Precisely.
Well, apparently, they bought the property in 2020. And in 2021, went before the HDC, the Historic District Commission, to ask for permission to build the home. They were denied, and an appeal was promptly filed in 2021 to the zoning board. It was not heard until this year. And it ultimately resulted in a remand to the HDC to take another crack at it because they ruled in the petitioner's favor. And the only thing is, the people that were on the HDC that denied the application in
right.
2021, there's maybe 2 of them left, so they have to start over again. So the petitioner's, you know, anticipating starting all over again. And based on the fact that it took 4 years to get a decision from the zoning board and the input from neighbors who apparently say, we're gonna do what we can to make sure this house doesn't get built. That's why he bought an interim home. Because he thinks if he is able to build the house he wants, it's gonna take about 7 years.
But the
Two
process,
buildings.
yeah, the remand now, requires the HDC to hear this matter again.
Yes,
So the remonstrants remain the same, presumably, I don't know. And there may be very well the same scenario. A denial, then a reversal by the zoning board.
could be.
So I'm just wondering, is this timely, this request before us?
The request
Yes.
doesn't have to do with that.
The request is so he can, so what he did is he said, look, we wanted to build a home on this plot of land that we bought.
Yeah,
But in the meantime, we have 3 kids under 6, I think, and we're gonna have more kids. We need a bigger place. I'm buying an interim home. And so it's gonna need repairs, so I need to go before the HDC and the zoning board. That footnote 1 is more like backstory.
yeah,
It really, you know, I put it in because he's been before the commission a number of times.
but he said it's gonna take 7 years. to
It
build
could.
it, So I just don't,
But what we're ruling on has nothing to do with that.
well, in a way it does,
Like,
because we
right.
don't know exactly how the remonstrants are gonna feel about this, and
Right.
therefore he could be back here again.
He wants to know if he can appear about the interim home for repairs to that.
Yeah, okay, on that basis, you know, on the interim home, though.
Yeah, that's
That's
what he
what
wants
this
to
is
continue
about.
on.
Right,
That's what
but
this is about.
he wants to build a new home there.
But that's not before us today.
Not there.
This, you know why I put that in, Commissioner, is because when I made the statement, he anticipates it will take 7 years to
Yeah.
get this new home. I'm thinking people might wonder why. He accounted for maybe 4.5 years to go through the process again, and then if it's approved, 2 years to build the home they want. So it rounded up to 7. That was really in just for,
I mean, it had to do with the hardship.
and it had to do with the hardship. He did want the commission to know that he's been recusing. So he just wants to, he bought an interim home, his family's growing. It needs to be fixed up. And that's why he's asking if he can go before the HDC and the zoning board on the interim home. Maybe he'll be back at some point for that other home, but it was really in there just to kind of season the facts.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
I have 2 comments. He may be 7 years getting approval this time too on this property, since he's got to be before the Historic District Commission, if somebody can appeal this one to the zoning board. That's number 1, and I can say, I hope he doesn't have the same kind of neighbors.
But your first point is my concern.
But that's speculative.
That's,
Well,
that's
again,
the comment.
it's speculative, but again, it's still, we're dealing with remonstrance, so whatever.
But it's not before us today.
No, it's not, in terms of how he's going to approach it is before us. Whatever.
Well, one of the things we insert in a hardship exception is that if someone is allowed to go before a board over which he has appointing authority, he's not appointing anybody for the duration and through the appellate process. That's so he can't put anyone on there or take anyone off there.
But he has to appear before any hearings, with HDC and the zoning board.
Right, And we're saying it's okay for him to do that. That's what we are, that's what the motion.
And in large part, in big part, it's because he's building a home he wants to live in. Now, if he comes and says, I bought a sweet piece of property in town and I'm gonna build a commercial structure and rent it out and make a ton of dough,
Yeah.
can I have a hardship? No, you can't.
That's not my concern.
Right.
Okay, any other questions? Is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation? Is there a second?
Second,
Moved by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Peterson. Roll call vote. Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Centarini.
All right,
Commissioner Ritchie.
No,
Commissioner Peterson.
aye.
And the chair votes aye. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next,
Before we do that, Commissioner Peterson.
Yes, one more
Yes.
thing, sorry, I need to change my vote for approval of the minutes from,
oh,
from
okay.
yes to abstain. Forgot I wasn't here.
Thank you.
I thought I was here, but I was not. No, I was sick. I was
Oh, right.
sick that week. Check my calendar.
Okay, the next item is a motion to go into executive session to wit, to take up a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session held on January 23rd, 2024. Pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5. Take up in re Michael Calisante, complaint number 2023-10, pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5A, 2, and 4. To consider in re Richard Nisani, complaint number 2023-9, pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5A, 2, and 4, and then to return to open session. Is there a motion to go to executive session?
so moved.
Okay, roll call vote, Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss. Commissioner Centarini.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Great.
Thank you. We will reopen the live stream once we return to open session.